If you know who I'm talking about, then you got me. My biggest enemy is me, and even I can't stop me. They try to shut us down and it ain't gon' slide. Only thing I fear is God and he on my side. That's the confidence I got, cause he got me. That's why I really feel like you can't stop me.
What is up, folks? I am Brandon Garcia. I am Coach B, and this is the next podcast. The podcast I have coming up for you today is an amazing one. First of all, it's our first remote interview, which is pretty cool for me. I'm a little bit of a nerd about stuff like that, so this was a great experience for me, great learning experience. So pardon some of the weird technical stuff that may happen. Like I said, I'm still learning, and this is a cool experience because I got to interview somebody whose journey has definitely impacted me and inspired me, and I know her journey is going to be one that you'll relate to as well. Her name is Cassidy Bowie. She has come up against, like us, many different obstacles in her life, and really her story is one of someone who decided that she wasn't going to let life beat her down, that she was going to take control of her life and mold her life and point her life in the direction that she wanted it to go, no matter what happens. And her journey is kind of a great example of persistence and grit, because she comes up against some hardship, she learns to overcome it, and then life kind of kicks her and makes her restart. And you know what? She didn't falter. She didn't fall off. She made a decision to keep going and to keep pushing. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Cassidy Bowie. Cassidy, we finally get to sit down. We had to reschedule a little bit, so it's going to be kind of
right.
It's going to be cool. I'm excited to hear your story because I only know bits and pieces of it. Because we met through Colorado Obstacle Racers,
Correct.
So I'm just shout out to David and Laura and that whole group out there doing their thing. Do you guys have
Definitely.
Do you have a similar group out in Texas where you're at now?
Yes. So the Lone Star Spartans are out here, and that's who I've been running some obstacle races with.
Oh, cool! Right on. All right. So one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is because you have come up against some really kind of incredible things in your journey, and part of this podcast is telling people, like, hey, even though you're coming up against hardship, you can still keep pushing. You can still keep doing things. You don't have to allow those hard things in your life to take you over. And you are kind of a great you are a great example of that. And so I have an appreciation of what I know of it, and so I want to try to tell that story a little bit. So we'll kind of start, I guess, at the beginning, like where did you grow up? Have you moved a lot? Different things like that. So I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Okay. I grew up in a small town in Colorado called Trinidad, Colorado. The last town on I-25 before you hit New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So my graduating class was 90 kids, and very small compared to most people when I moved to the city.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Colorado Springs, and I ventured back and forth between Colorado Springs and Denver for the majority of my adult life. And then last year I decided to make a jump, packed up all my belongings, and moved to Texas. And so it's actually all worked out really well for me, but I do love living down here. The heat's something to get used to. It's been in the hundreds for 2 weeks now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I couldn't do that. My father-in-law lives down in Mojave Valley, which is like southwestern Arizona, and I don't understand how y'all do that. That's crazy. So
I love it, yeah.
Right on. Okay, so just another piece of the backstory. What are you doing now, like for a living? What do you do for a living?
I am a manufacturing electrical engineer. So essentially what I do is I oversee all RF and digital electronic assembly builds at our contract manufacturing locations. And we have locations in Germany, Mexico, Israel, and Hong Kong. And so I oversee all the design changes that happen to all these assemblies. And then I go to the CM locations to ensure they're being built properly. So that's why I travel so much now.
Oh, that's
also why I like this job. I get to travel everywhere. So
that's super cool. Yeah, I know we were talking. You're about to head to Israel for a few weeks. I'm very jealous. That's a place
Yep.
I would definitely want to go. So
Yeah, I'll be there for a little over 2 weeks at the beginning of August.
that's so cool. Let's talk about your athletic background. Like, did you play sports in high school? Is that something you got into later in life? How did that come about?
So I always played golf in high school. And then as soon as I got to college, I stopped playing sports altogether. And then that's when I got sick. And then that's where the story starts. And that's what leads into everything that's happened to me in this lovely journey called life.
Yeah. So, because nobody knows, that's part of the story. So what did you, like, at what age did you get diagnosed, and what did you get diagnosed with?
At 21 years old, I was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then, so you just basically just chilled off of all sports from there?
So as soon as I was diagnosed, it went downhill really, really fast. I got extremely ill. I was in and out of the hospital like every other week. And keep in mind, this is while I was trying to get my engineering degree at the same time. So I was in and out of the hospital. I was trying not to miss classes because I wanted to make sure I got my degree on time. I got so sick to the point where I could barely walk. I ended up I had a handicap placard because my joints, my knees were so swollen that I could barely move. And I lived on the second floor of my apartment complex, so I used to have to sit on the stairs and scoot on my butt to go down the stairs every day because I couldn't go up and down the stairs. And it used to take me like 10 minutes to go up a flight of stairs because it just hurt so much physically to be able to go up and down the stairs. So it went downhill really quick, and I got really, really, really sick there for, I was sick for a long time.
Yeah. No, it's something like that when you're battling something like that, it doesn't just affect, your athletic life, your active life. Like, it starts to affect other places. So, you're in the middle of that engineering degree. Like, did it make passing those classes, like, how much more difficult was that? Kind of talk about that a little bit.
So passing classes was definitely hard. I mean, I wasn't an A student by any means. I was more of your B.C. student, and I had always been an A student. I was valedictorian in my senior class. Like, I had always been that perfectionist, and I'm still that perfectionist. But it made it hard because all I wanted to do was sleep. Like, I was so sick, all I wanted to do was sleep, but I had homework and I had projects, and so I wasn't my full potential in college in my bachelor's degree because of that. And that was really hard for me to accept, but I knew I had to in order to be able to keep going. And then I knew I'd get in the hospital if I overdid it. And so there's a loopy principle about talking about counting your spoons. Like, you can only do so much every day because you only have physically so much energy every single day, and you have to pick your battles, and you have to choose what you're willing to do in order to be able to get past everything that you have to do that day.
Right. So then as you kind of move forward, you're learning how to, for lack of a better term, kind of manage your disease, your illness. Like, as you finish up college and you're moving through life, like, obviously something like that starts to affect other relationships and other parts of your life. Do you feel comfortable talking about that stuff?
Oh, no, most definitely. So when I was in college, I most definitely didn't handle having the disease very well. So getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, you're going to get depressed. It's inevitable because your own body is attacking yourself. There's no better way to put it, but your own body is out to kill you. You fight a fight every single day to make sure that your own body isn't going to attack an organ. And in college, my solution to that was drinking a lot. So I drink to where I didn't hurt anymore. And so that affected my grades as well. But that was my solution. And it wasn't until I had graduated from college and got a job in Denver that all that realization came true. And so there's that part of it. And then the relationship part is that as soon as people find out I have lupus, they're scared. Or they're not comfortable or willing to handle that relationship because I don't know when I'm going to get sick. I can't tell you when I'm going to get sick or how sick I'm going to be or if I'm going to end up in the hospital or if I'm going to have heart surgery or any of these things. And that's a lot for somebody to take on in terms of that. And it's not always easy for others to deal with.
Right.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Now, you said you moved to Denver. Where did you go to college? I may have missed that. I'm sorry.
So I went to CU in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
So the UCPS.
Okay. And then, so then you moved up to Denver. So when I met you, you were just coming out of a relationship at that 24-hour AMRAP thing, and so learning how to, or not learning how to, but like dealing with all of that. Plus, like you were like when I met you, you were just somebody who, I mean, you called yourself the burpee queen. Like you just loved burpees. Like that was your thing.
I still do.
It's like after was a couple of weeks after the 24-hour AMRAP, you put out a challenge to our group that said, I'm going to do 5,000 burpees in 30 days, but if 100 people do it with me, I'll do 10,000. And I went, all right, I'm in. So I did the 5,000, and I watched you do the 10,000, which it took you 40 days instead of the 30 that you wanted?
It took me a couple days beyond that, but I did do the full amount of burpees. I was just basically doing burpees in between CrossFit classes and doing burpees in the morning and at lunch at work, getting a cube at work. Like I was doing burpees all the time.
Do 10,000 burpees.
I was able to do it, and we got other people to do burpees, which is, in my mind, awesome. Not everybody loves burpees.
No, but I will tell you this. Since that challenge, burpees don't bother me anymore. They're so much easier having done 5,000. So respect to you for pulling off 10,000.
And the only reason I like burpees is that I had, in my athletic journey, when I first started working out a lot after being super sick, a friend of mine challenged me to do 100 burpees a day for a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did that journey with my friend Nikki. She lives in Florida now, but her and her husband actually started with me get on my athletic journey. And then that's where, like, changing everything went about, and that's where actually improving my health overall. It started with burpees and obstacle course racing.
Right on. That's really cool. Like that's, a lot of people, like, I think burpees might be the most hated exercise on the planet. So I think the fact that you tackled that specific movement head on, I think says something about the strength of your mental state and your spirit. That's a big deal.
Definitely.
So, so just kind of being real about it, being like talking about real life. So I kind of mentioned like you were just coming out of a relationship. Like, can you talk about like not necessarily the relationship itself, but like the emotional toll that took on you? How did that affect what you were battling physically, things like that?
So stress is a really bad trigger for lupus or pretty much anybody. Stress is always one of those evil things that it gets to us, and we don't realize how bad they're playing a part on us. But what I've learned to do is no matter what stress I'm going through in life, I turn it and make it a positive. So getting out of a relationship, having to change jobs because it's not the ideal situation, I turn around and make it a positive, and then I become like honed in on my workouts. Like I just focus on working out all the time, and that's what that turns into. Is that we did the 24-hour AMRAP, and our team came in fourth,
which was awesome.
Right? We were completely dead after that, but I mean, it was things like that it just drives me to try to be a better person overall. And so that's what I've always heard. I always turn the negatives into positives to try to make sure that you got to make the best out of life.
Right. So as you're going through, like, trying to figure out how to deal with all this and try to keep yourself healthy and do things, was there like a moment for you where you were just like, no, I am not going to let this control my life anymore? Like, I'm drawing the line. Was there that like kind of epiphany moment for you?
Oh no, most definitely. So it was before we met. I had started working out at one of the gyms with a coworker that when I moved to Denver, and Jonathan's like, I'm signing you up for Tough Mudder. And I'm like, you're doing what? Like, I had never heard of obstacle course racing at that point.
Yeah.
I couldn't even do a push-up. I couldn't run a mile. Like, I'd have to walk. I could barely make it a quarter mile running. That's how out of shape I was. And like physically, I'm fighting my disease at the same time because my body's like, oh, what are you doing? Why are we exerting ourselves? So after I ran that very first Tough Mudder, and I cried my eyes out for almost the whole thing with my little brother and my good friend Shannon alongside me, and knowing how swollen my knees were at the end of that, I was like, I can't let this disease handle my life anymore. Yeah. I'm not going to be defined by it. I'm not going to let it control me. I said, I am too young to live I want to live in misery every single day because I'm not willing to be proactive about it. And so that's when I started doing research about lupus, what alternative medicine I can use to do that. Since then, I've gone from being on 35 medications. I'm on no medications right now.
Wow, that's pretty astounding. That's cool. So yeah. So I just want to like call attention to something that you were saying is like you were. How old were you when you did that first Tough Mudder?
24.
24. Okay.
No, 25.
25. So I want to just point out to people that like at 25 years old, you made a decision that I'm not going to let something like this control my life. Like even though you were still young, you had enough wherewithal to say, no, I'm not going to do this. And you had enough foresight to say, my whole life is not going to be defined by this because I want to live better. That's a huge thing that I think people need to hear and feel is that there's a lot of people who will be beat down by something, whether it's an autoimmune disease or an injury or a broken relationship or whatever that is, and they'll just allow that to just obliterate their life. And so,
yeah, most definitely. And I've had a lot of people that come across my path. I am very vocal on my Instagram about lupus and exercise and doing what, your healthy alternatives. And I've come across the most random people that have become really close friends of mine. They're like, because of you, I decided not to give up because you were in a really, really, really bad spot. And the easy path would have been to just give up and say, okay, I'm going to die at 27 because I'm going to let lupus take over me, and I chose not to. And so in that regard, I feel blessed that I feel like God had me on this path, even though I got really, really, really upset that, I got diagnosed with such a horrible disease. I went through the path of, he must hate me. But then on the backside of things, once I made my own realization and my come to aha moment, I realized that there's a reason why I was given this. And the reason is to truly help others and to make others realize that, hey, you can do this. It may not be easy, but you can most definitely beat whatever you're up against, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I think that's a valuable point to point out is that it's rarely easy, but it's always worth it because you get control of your life back.
Right. Yeah.
So you kind of take that back over, you do your first Tough Mudder. Like, where did you go from there as far as, like, taking that over? You said you sought out some alternative medication or alternative treatment. And then I know this is kind of the part of the journey. I know you kept pushing forward athletically and doing some other stuff. So just kind of talk about that and the things that kept you pushing forward.
So the biggest thing for me that actually helped eliminate like the symptoms and all of that was my diet. So I decided to go paleo cold turkey. Like I went into my kitchen, I got rid of every single processed food and I took it to the food pantry and I went paleo cold turkey. It was a very rough first 2 weeks.
That is
because
legit
your body's
hard.
going through withdrawals. Your body's like, well, wait a second, where's my sugar? And it's not there. But then after that, and still to this day, like paleo is like the best thing for me. Like paleo or keto type diet, that natural, organic, no processed foods diet is truly what makes me feel better. If I cheat and go back to processed foods, I feel it the next day.
Yeah.
And I know that's so. Food is so essential in healing yourself and in ensuring that you can do all the athletic things that you want to do. I always say that abs are made in the kitchen because you can work out all you want, but if you're eating McDonald's 3 times a day, you're not going to make any athletic gains. So for me, food was the biggest thing to change.
And you point out 2 big time things there. Like one is, pulling yourself into eating real food, unprocessed food. That made you feel better, but then also on top of that, now you're looking at it from an athletic standpoint. Like, I don't need to just feel better. I need to be able to show up on race day and perform. And it affects both of them so heavily that people don't realize. It's a both and, not an either or.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so you have to have both those in combination, and that's the mindset you have to have if you want to go do the crazy races that I sign up for. So.
Mm-hmm. So you've done Tough Mudder, just one or a few or?
I've done 5 Tough Mudders. I've done close to 50 Spartans, I think.
Okay, that's a big deal.
I've done a 50 miler and several other road races,
Right.
but the 50 miler was my big deal.
Now, was that part of the Ragnar? Was that part of your Ragnar team?
No, so I've done those too. I've
Okay.
done a lot of Ragnars. I've actually ran a 50 miler itself. So in Kansas,
Oh,
Alicia McGregor and I went and ran a 50 miler.
was that the Prairie Spirit or whatever? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's there's a few of our core folks that have gone out and done that one.
Yes.
Yep. So you did that. When did you hook up with we call them CORE, Colorado Obstacle Racers, which for those that don't know, CORE is a group on Facebook. It's a private group on Facebook that if you want to be a part of obstacle racing or really just kind of racing in general, it's a Facebook group where you can get together, carpool with people to races, build teams, share hotel rooms when you travel for, crazy Spartans in the other half of the country, things like that. So when did you find that group?
It was shortly after I did my first Tough Mudder.
Okay. And
But right after that is that I joined that group, and then that's, since then I've been able to have that community. And I know I still live in Texas, but I'm going to always be a Colorado obstacle course racer.
yeah.
But yeah, so it was shortly after the first Tough Mudder, and then after that is when it just exploded that I was purely addicted to doing the races, and I wanted to do as many as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Not unlike most of us that do our first obstacle race, whether it's Spartan or Tough Mudder or Rugged Maniac or Warrior Dash, you kind of get the bug. So
Yes. Yes.
So can you talk about a little bit how important those communities, both CORE and then having moved to Texas, that the Texas group, I think you said the Lone Star folks, how much of an impact has that kind of community and group had in you continuing on this journey?
So definitely throughout the beginning of my journey, when I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, that community and that support is essential because somebody's always going to be there to encourage you, to help you keep going, all those amazing things. Most recently, I did a beast down here in Texas to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of my Pacemaker. And so I decided to run an obstacle course race to celebrate having a pacemaker, which most people wouldn't do. But to have the community, I didn't have any core members down here, but be able to have the Lone Star Spartans, they hadn't even known me. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple girls that raced that whole race with me to make sure that I'd be okay and make it through the race. So just that support. I mean, purely that's the basis of it. It's a family. It's your second family.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that people are so hesitant to do, when they try to start their journey, a journey like yours, is that they're afraid to kind of put themselves in those community and put themselves around people like that because they have experience with bad people, and so they don't realize that putting themselves around good people like that is going to make such a huge difference in their journey.
Right. And I mean, the support alone, the support you find in these groups is outstanding. They're going to help no matter who it is. They're going to be the ones on the course that are offering people mustard packets when they're cramping. It's that foundation of what these groups are meant to be that is so crucial. Because without it, there's a lot of people that wouldn't even do obstacle course racing. Yeah. I know I probably could have given up early on because I wouldn't have had the support that was there.
Yeah. So. That's it. Yeah. The support piece becomes so crucial. Especially, like you said, early in that journey, you need that core group of people that is just going to be like, hey, you had a bad day, it's okay. Or, hey, you had a great day, good job. It makes a difference. And it doesn't seem like it at the time, but then when you look back at it, you're like, if that person hadn't been there, I might have quit.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Most definitely.
So you mentioned something, you did a Spartan Beast, which for those that don't know is a 12 to 15 mile obstacle race through mud and dirt and hills and all kinds of stuff. You did it in a celebration of 1 year of having a pacemaker. So can you talk about how you found out. I mean, you're already in your journey, and all of a sudden you find out you need a pacemaker, and then kind of your journey back through that, because you almost had to restart.
I did have to restart. So I had been passing out at the time, and anybody who knows me, I'm stubborn, and I wasn't telling anybody I was passing out. It took me passing out in front of somebody and then not getting me to come to for a good 2-3 minutes, like slapping me on the cheek to get me to come to, saying, hey, we're going to the hospital, something's not right. So they put me on a Holt monitor, and the day after my birthday in 2016, on October 3rd of 2016, they caught my heart stopping on the little monitor, and it stopped twice within 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
What was happening is electrically, the lower half of my heart stops responding altogether. So then I'm not getting the blood pumping, I'm not getting the oxygen, and then I pass out.
Oh.
And
Well, that's
so
fun.
my doctor gave me an ultimatum. He's like, you either live with this the rest of your life, and you're not going to be able to drive, or you get a pacemaker. And I'm not going to give up, so I ended up with a pacemaker. I got a pacemaker on October 26th of 2016.
Wow. So you got your pacemaker. How long did you have to wait to come back into starting training, and like what were your restrictions? Do you still have restrictions? Things like that.
It was a good 5 months that I had to wait before I could really do anything. And then my cardiologist cleared me to start running. But then my heart started doing the opposite of what it was doing before. So then my heart started going too fast for long periods of time.
Oh, man.
So then I had to stop running altogether. And then that's when I got into powerlifting, because that's the alternative to.
Right. If you're not going to run and lift heavy things.
Powerlifting, and I'm still a powerlifter. But I started lifting heavy because your heart doesn't go as fast for as long. So, but now that moving to Texas, elevation-wise is good for me. My pacemaker doesn't go off nearly as much. And so now I'm back in full training mode for my crazy race schedule towards the end of the year.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. So kind of looking at your journey and just trying to form this in a way so people understand this. So I don't know if you know this, I didn't really explain this before. So the podcast is called The Next Podcast. It stands for Nutrition, Exercise, and Triumph. And you've talked about all three of those things, which is perfect because it was completely unintentional. Where you're at now, I mean, you picked up and moved to Texas so that you could have a job that more fit what you wanted to do. I mean, you really took ownership and started to kind of craft your life the way you wanted it.
Okay.
Looking forward at what's coming, what are some big things that you're hoping to accomplish, either like personally, professionally, athletically? Do you have the goals in front of you like that?
Yeah, so I am running the Ultra Beast down here in Texas in October.
Yes.
I'm going to do the Ultra Beast in October. I signed up for a 50-miler in December.
Nice.
So athletically, those are my two biggest goals, is to do the Ultra Beast in October and then turn around in December and run a 50-miler.
Cool.
Professionally, I am working on my master's degree, and I will complete my master's degree and have a year and a half to go. I'll complete my master's degree and then just continue growing as an engineer in this company, which this company is amazing and is allowing me to grow. I've had more career advances in a year than I've had in 9 years as an engineer.
Oh, wow.
So just the advancement opportunities to be able to do what I want to do as an engineer.
That's awesome. That's cool. So the last question I want to ask you, because I'm a fitness nerd, and I prepped you a little bit for this, is what does fitness mean to you, or what does it mean to you to be fit? However you want to answer that question. I just want to know what it means to you in your life and how it's how it's impacted you to keep you moving forward.
So fitness is my lifeline. When I don't work out, my lupus starts rearing its ugly little head from behind. It's like, oh, hey, I'm still here. But if I keep working out and I keep on top of my workout routines and I hit the gym and I eat my meals right, I feel like I don't even, even when I came down here, I'm trying to get set met up with a rheumatologist down here, and she's like, you look too healthy to have lupus. And I'm like, no, I've got stories. I can tell you stories. She goes, you look way too healthy compared to any of the other patients that I have coming in here that have lupus. And that's a compliment in itself. And she's like, well, how did you do this? I was like, exercise and eating. And she goes, that's not possible. And modern day medicine doesn't always recognize the benefits of, and I know I'm not a doctor, but modern day medicine doesn't recognize the benefits of healthy eating and exercise.
Yeah, so
for me, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a whole nother podcast that you and I could sit down and talk about. Like, wow.
Yes. Oh, we can go for hours on that one.
So, well, Cassidy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm glad we got the chance to connect, and this is the first time I've ever done a remote podcast like this, so this is going to be interesting as I sit down and try to edit this and clip it together and make all this stuff match. Just thank you. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for taking the time out to do this with me, and just keep doing what you're doing, girl, because I'm watching from afar, and I'm cheering for you. Last question, if you're okay with it, if you want to put it out there, social media-wise, where can people find you?
So my Instagram is where I'm probably the most active, and my Instagram is Lupus Combat.
Lupus Combat, okay. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for the time today, and keep doing what you're doing.
Welcome.
Good luck on the Ultra. That's a beast of a race. So, all right. Thanks, Cassidy.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
If you know who I'm talking about, then you got me. My biggest enemy is me, and even I can't stop me. They try to shut us down and it ain't gon' slide. Only thing I fear is God and he on my side. That's the confidence I got, cause he got me. That's why I really feel like